Glory to Jesus Christ. So, if you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that I'm primarily traditional Latin Mass and Byzantine Catholic Divine Liturgy, but I also regularly attend Novus Ordos. Most of the ones I go to are pretty reverent. Occasionally, I'll run into one with the outstanding liturgical abuse, and I can't stand it when that happens, but I'm usually pretty accepting of the Novus Ordo, pretty accepting when it's done in a reverent way. But today, I have to admit, today I really started to feel some anger again on it. I did go through the rad trad. Not that I think rad trad is really a good terminology, but I went through the rad trad trap a while back and kind of saw myself falling back into it again today on Divine Mercy Sunday of all days. I just felt myself getting overly angry. I wasn't really showing it, but externally, but I felt myself getting really angry when most of the parish doesn't kneel, when it's a bunch of receiving communion in the hand, but a lot of them do it in a really quick, irreverent way. I was getting overly angry at how people tend to do the Iran's position, hands out during the Our Father, when really that's a position of prayer for the priest, and the laity should ideally have prayer hands or keep their hands down or something. I just felt myself getting way too annoyed about this, way too mad about this, not just a reasonable discomfort, but just actually angry about it. And it reminds me of, so there's a good talk by Father Chad Ripperger, famous exorcist, traditionalist priest. He's the head of the Dolorans, the Society of the Most Sorrowful Mother, a society of exorcist priests. And they're a semi-contemplative society where they primarily pray and say Mass, and then they go deal with deliverance situations. And he did a really good talk on the Sensus Fidelium channel. I believe the talk was called Traditionalist Problems, where he talked a lot about how it's okay to be angry at things that have changed and the things that people are doing nowadays when it comes to the Novus Ordo and all of that, but that you can't let your anger drag you into sin. You can't let it become a sinful amount of anger, and if you notice that happening, you need to pray about it and find a way to calm yourself down about it and reason yourself out about it. And I believe he started his prayer in that talk with, "Do not let the sun set on your anger, do not give rise to the devil." And that is really resonating with me today. And then another thing that I read recently, so if you'll remember Steve Skojec, he was, I believe he started 1 Peter 5. I might be wrong on that. I know he was with 1 Peter 5, but I think he actually started it. He was one of the big prolific speakers against a lot of the things that Pope Francis was doing, the restrictions on the Latin Mass, and a lot of the corruption that had been going on in the Vatican and throughout the church. And I believe he was a layperson that just really dived head on into this. And in his article that he put on his, I think it was on his Substack, he titled it something like, Pope Francis is dead, but the damage remains, or maybe, but the damage is done. Something along those lines. Now, I'm not going to dishonor Pope Francis. I think he did a lot of good things. I've done some other videos on that recently, but I do think that he went over the top on things with the restrictions and not going as hard as he could have on schismatics and things like that. But Steve Skojec's article went into detail about how throughout the pontificate he dived heavily into it. He's also publicly said that he is autistic and that he developed what sounds like an autistic hyperfixation, maybe even a special interest, and I'm autistic, so I understand this, on basically resisting what he saw as corruption. Whether or not it was actual corruption, I'm not going to get into that right now, but he was actively resisting at a hyperfixation level the corruption that he perceived in the Catholic Church, whether the corruption was true or not. We know that there's corruption in the church, we know this, but in doing so, he admitted in this article that he would dive so heavy into it that it was eating into his personal life. He was writing all these things. I believe he was making a bunch of videos. I might be wrong on the videos part. I didn't pay much attention to Steve Skojec at that time, but I know he did a lot with 1 Peter 5 on this, and throughout his article, he admitted that it just ate into his personal life. He admitted that it was causing problems in his relationship. He admitted that he would occasionally let it eat into his family dinner time because he would have to argue with someone who made a wrong comment on the internet. And these are all things that he said and that he admitted to and that he wanted to make public. And over time, he realized that he can't keep letting his anger ruin his personal life. He said that this whole thing was causing problems with his faith. He said that he was diving so far into church politics that he couldn't even see the church the same way anymore. He compared it to the Matrix. He said he felt like he had to be Morpheus and free people from the system. And then at one point he felt like Cypher, where he just wanted to take the blue pill and go back to not knowing things and just go back to where he was. But he said that he had already found out so much about corruption and scandal throughout the church that he didn't even feel like he had a place to go back to. And I think there are a lot of traditionalists who are running into that same situation. And he said that when Francis died, he didn't have the reaction that he thought he would have. He really felt nothing or felt emotions that he can't describe. And when he told his wife about this, I believe it was his wife, she said, well, why would you feel anything? You didn't even know him. And he said that hit him really hard. Now, I was a Francis supporter on a lot of things. And I'm not trying to bash the man. I'm not. But I do understand the traditionalist side, and I can definitely resonate with what Steve Skojec is saying on the autistic level and developing a special interest in things and diving head first into it to the point where you find out so much in-depth political information that it really tarnishes your view of the bigger picture. I get that. I do. And that also goes back to what Father Ripperger was saying, where the church will not fall. That's a divine mandate, that the gates of hell will not overcome the church, no matter how much corruption that is, no matter the problems that are going around, the church will not fall, and we need to keep faith in that. And I'm going to go back to being a general supporter of the Novus Ordo. I'm going to go back to being a general supporter of the Novus Ordo, while primarily doing the traditional Latin Mass and the Divine Liturgy, the older traditions like that. But today it definitely hit me hard, and it seemingly came out of nowhere. I don't know.